Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back, I should say. It was just 3 days ago we had a lecture next door. Sultan Al-Qasimi was here lecturing on aspects of the development and growth of the Gulf cities, the rise and rise of the Gulf cities, as he called it. And those of you who were at that lecture will have noticed that he left space for a talk on architecture. He deliberately didn't talk about his views on the growth of skyscrapers in the UAE, but I'm not sure whether that is what our speaker will speak about tonight. We're very delighted to welcome and honoured also Rashad Bukhash from Dubai, who's the CEO, as you can see on the screen, of the Architectural Heritage and Antiquities Department at Dubai Municipality. He's a former member of the FNC, Federal National Council, and currently he's also the chairman of the Architectural Heritage Society of the UAE and then a local NGO. Mr. Bukhash has 23 years of experience in the conservation of historic buildings, museum design and management, as well as related landscaping projects. With his background and training in architecture and conservation, he has supervised the conservation of more than 136 historic buildings in Dubai, the Emirates, and further abroad. He has also supervised the design and construction of more than 200 modern and contemporary buildings, including universities, colleges, public buildings, parks, and community facilities. Mr. Bukhash has also supervised the design and construction of 12 museums in Dubai, including Dubai Museum, Shaikh Saeed House, the Heritage House, Al Ahmadiyya School, the Camel and Horse Museums, and the Traditional Architecture Museum. And of course, he has an important role. He will have an important role to play in the Expo of 2020, and perhaps he'll talk a bit about that when he's up on the podium. Mr. Bukhash has won many prizes, such as the Best Employee of Dubai Government, stretching back to 1998, the Rashad Prize for Scientific Excellence in 2002, and among many prizes I just mentioned, the 2008 UAE Award for Excellence in Architecture, and the Best Architect of the Year in 2009 from the Organization of Arab Cities. He has written or edited more than 32 books on the architecture, history, and traditions of Dubai and the UAE. Please welcome Mr. Rashad Bukhash.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, salatu wassalam ala Rasulullah. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's my pleasure to be here with you tonight. I'd like to thank New York University Abu Dhabi to invite me for giving this lecture. Although the lecture, I think it needs about 3-4 hours to talk. They give me just 45 minutes, so I'll try to summarize it in 45 minutes. I'm going to talk about the architectural heritage of Dubai. I think we'll go this way. Always we start with the quote of late Shaikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, may Allah be pleased with him. Man la madiya lahu la hadara lahu wa la mustaqbal. He who has no past, has no present, and shall have no future. It's very important to take care of our past, our heritage, our archaeological sites, our culture, the history which we had, to live our present, having this past in our life, not just to imitate, but to have it, and then looking for the future, to build our future with this past in our mind. Why we should preserve our architectural heritage and archaeological sites? Number one, to emphasize the national identity. It is part of our history, part of our civilization, part of our culture, to keep this identity, especially in a country like UAE, where the locals are only about 10%, and it is moving very fast towards modernity. So it's very important to keep the history, the architectural buildings, the archaeological sites, and so on, to keep this national identity. Second, to increase the awareness for the importance of preserving heritage. Again, this is not our history, but it is part of the history of the world, because every country, every nation, they are part of the history of the world. And our history is related to the history of the Arabian Peninsula, to Saudi Arabia, to Kuwait, to Oman, to Iran, Pakistan, India, Zanzibar. So it's part of the history of the world, and that's why it is important to preserve it as much as possible. Developing the national economy through heritage tourism. Again, now, tourism, as we know nowadays, it's a very important income for the countries like France, Spain, Italy, and even right now, Emirates, especially maybe the Emirate of Dubai. The tourism is a very important part, and we, as our department, we consider the cultural tourism as a very important part of tourism. We have a lot of tourists who come to go to the shopping malls, to see the modern buildings, but also to see the historic part of the cities, whether it is in Al Ain, in Dubai, and Sharjah, and others, because a lot of tourists also, they want to see this culture and the history, not only to see the modern part of the city, but to see the cultural part of the city also. Fourth issue is spreading the local architectural heritage, to learn from the architectural heritage which we had. As I always say, this was an architecture which developed, completed for more than 1,000 years, changing and developing to become suitable to our climate, to our culture. And now we have to learn from this architecture, the materials which they have used, the designs, the courtyard houses, the wind towers, the walls, all of these things, which I'm going to talk a little bit in the lecture. Fifth, to put the historic sites on the World Heritage List, and that's very important also to come to get to the international level. Maybe we worked on the local level as Emirates, as a country. We reached to the regional level, and now we have to go to the worldwide. The first site of the Emirates which was put on the World Heritage List was Al Ain City, and right now we have submitted Dubai Creek, the historic part of the city of Dubai, to be on the World Heritage List with UNESCO, and supposed to be discussed next year in June, inshallah. Number 6, learning from traditional architecture in constructing the present and future of the country. Again, to learn the philosophy of architecture, the suitability of the buildings, which is very important. Nowadays, our cities are considered to be one of the highest cities on architecture, and which is consuming energy, especially with the skyscrapers, no windows to outside, so we have to use solar energy, what we call now the green architecture, sustainability, all of these things. The traditional architecture which we had in the 1950s, it was 100% green architecture, using the natural lighting, natural ventilation, all of these things. So again, we have to go back and look into these things and learn from it for the future of our architecture and our cities and town planning. The 7, encouraging scientific research in the field of architectural heritage and archaeology, to learn from what we had before. So quickly, I'll start with the history of Old Dubai. And usually every part of this lecture, it needs another lecture by itself, but I'll just go quickly. In Dubai, in the whole emirate, we have something like 3,200 archaeological and historic sites all over the Emirates. Abu Dhabi something like 600, in Dubai about 500, and so on. Ras Al Khaimah, a lot of them. And this slide, anyhow, let me show maybe with the mouse, okay. Okay, so we have, in Dubai we have main sites, Jumeirah Islamic site, which is the early Islamic, which is in Jumeirah. And then we have Saruq al-Hadid, which I'm going to talk about. It's a very, very important site, which was discovered by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashad Al Maktoum in 2002. And as you have seen 2 weeks ago, they have taken the logo of Expo 2020 from that site also. Next to it is Al-Ushush archaeological site. Then we have Hatta and Al-Qusais archaeological site, and Al-Sufuh, which is also from Nar area. This is a pot which was discovered in Saruq al-Hadid. From 2002 until today, 2016, more than 12,000 items have been discovered in the site, and that is only about 10% of what it is there. The site is about 2 kilometers by 1.5 kilometers. Very large site, supposed to be one of the richest archaeological sites in the Arabian Peninsula. And for example, here the pot, which is about 80 centimeters in diameter, and we can notice the snake, which is on most of the items which we have found. So maybe they were like snake worshippers and so on. Some of the other pots and items which was found in Sarug al-Hadid. These are some of the rings of a necklace for ladies, which have been found. So we have found gold, silver, pottery, stamps, shells, and all different items. The ring, which is here, with 20 round heads, it's a very unique one, and 20 from outside, 20 from inside. That was the one which was selected to be the logo for Expo Dubai, so it is 2020, and it's very nice, and it's giving the kind of connection of Dubai to the world, and continuity, modernity, and relation to the identity, and so on. These are some of the other golden items as jewelries, either for the ladies' noses or as earrings, which was used. So a lot of gold items we have found in the site. On the right, ring, very, very delicate also. So although it is in the middle of the desert, Sarug al-Hadid, but lot of things have been discovered, which till now, as I said, we have only discovered 10% of the site. We are looking for more. There is no settlement till now, no barrier areas, which are supposed to be found in the coming years.
Yes.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay, thank you. So Sarug al-Hadid needs a whole lecture. I can talk for 1 hour about Sarug al-Hadid, but quickly I'll just go. This is the second site is Al-Qusais, which goes back to 2600 BC. In Al-Qusais, we have found more than 48 tombs. For example, this tomb, we can see that a male and a female have been buried together with the complete dress. The dress is not there, but the items, for example, the dagger for the man, the arrowheads at the back of his shoulder, and the lady with all her jewelry elements. So she had the necklace, shells with kuhul in it, and different items completely buried. And right now, this, especially this one, is in Dubai Museum in Al-Fuhaidi Fort. This is a third archaeological site, which is Al-Sufuh tomb from Nar civilization, about 2500 BC. And these tombs are different in sizes. For example, this one has 6 rooms as a burial. Usually they were burying the body there for 20, 30 years. And then after that, they were taking out, putting them into this hole, which is next to the rounded shape. And then new bodies will be buried in the same place. The fourth archaeological site is the Islamic site, which is from Jumeirah. It is the second Islamic century Abbasi area, because we have found some of the coins of the Buwayhi period, and which is the 9th century AD. So we have about 7 main houses there. We call it the fort, a mosque. The mosque, for sure, it shows the direction for the Qibla, and a small market area, souk. And it looks that it was on the way of the caravans coming from Iraq to the north, to Oman to the south. So they were passing by this settlement along the sea, which is in Jumeirah. And right now we are working on it. We are having a small museum in the site, which is supposed to be open in September this year, inshallah. Then coming closer, in the year 1587, that's the first time when we have the name of Dubai, as we call it nowadays, exactly mentioned by a Venetian pearl merchant called Gaspero Balbi. In 1587, he was coming to the Gulf area to buy pearls. And we know the pearls then, it was as jewelry for the crowns of the kings and the queens of Europe. And he mentioned cities where they deal in pearl merchants like Dubai, Sharjah, and here he didn't write Ajman, he said Iman, as we pronounce it, Al-Quwain, Jilfar, and others. And there was a kind of thinking that if they take also the pearl and crush it, make it a powder, and you drink it with the water, then your life will be longer. Maybe some people can try it, I don't know. Then coming a little bit more closer, the first map of Dubai which we have from 1822. That was drawn by Lieutenant Coogan from the British Maritime. We know that the British came to this area in 1806 after we had the Portuguese and the others European countries. And the good thing about the British and the Britain that they have drawn and wrote exactly in description about every village and city from Basra, Kuwait, coming down to Muscat and either the other cities like Zanzibar and other places. Mainly it was for political reasons, but for us it is very important because we got a lot of information about these maps. For example, this map, it shows this is the Arabian Gulf and Dubai Creek, as we can see nowadays somehow. The settlement was very small settlement along the creek in what we call nowadays Bar Dubai. And Lieutenant Coogan, he described the village. The population was very small, between 1,000 to 1,200 only, with a low wall around the city, which we have part of it. So for us, these are references to look, for example, the wall which is around the city, part of it we have discovered, and part of it we are going to rebuild to show how the city was. Another unique thing that Deira was completely desert. Shandagha was also, again, nothing there. So the only settlement was in Bar Dubai, and that is the origin of the city of Dubai. And through the history, then we know that this was in 1822. In 1833, we had the establishment of the Emirate of Dubai under the Al Maktoum family. And then in 1841, there was a disease, a plague in Dubai. So people started moving to Deira. And that's when Deira started to be developed much more. And 1861, then even people started to go to Shandagha. And Shandagha started development where the Sheikh himself, he moved in 1896. This map, it shows the development of the city of Dubai. So the 1822, that was the walled city of Dubai, we can say. And we are trying to bring it back, this walled city, as we know, the walled city of Beijing and other cities in the world. So it's very important. Most of the cities, there was a wall around Sharjah, Ajman, Al Quwain, Ras Al Khaimah. So all of these cities, they had the wall toward the desert, not toward the sea, because always the attacks were coming from the desert. And then, as I mentioned, the 1841 moving to Deira and the development of Deira through the years 1850, 1860, 1900, until we came to 1950. We consider it as the peak of the architectural heritage. We made a survey and found that we had about 3,200 buildings in Dubai in 1950, which we have been working on. And for example, Shandagha completely, we know the owner of every building in 1950. The same thing in Bar Dubai and Bar Deira. We are working to have exactly the population and the names of the people who lived in the area. This is a nice aerial photo of Dubai showing the three parts of the city. The creek, which we have nowadays, and we are going to register the creek as a World Heritage Site with this kind of area. Shandagha, which is having two directions, one toward the creek and one toward the sea, the Gulf. That's why Shandagha was a strategic area for the people to live, because you get the winds from the north and also from the south and from east. This open area is called Ghubayba, a small of Ghubba, which is a low area. When there was a high tide, the water was coming in. That's why there is not much of construction in that area. Then we have Bar Dubai, the market area, the Fuhaidi area at the end, which previously was Al Bastakiya, and the other residential areas over here. Deira side, we have the Al Ras area, a lot of buildings like Ahmadiyya School, Heritage House, the bigger grand market in Deira with the specialized markets. I'm going to talk a little bit. And you can see the shallow area, the head, we call it, in Deira side. And as they say, when a boat was coming from the Gulf to the creek, person from Dubai should ride or drive the boat itself, because if he goes to this area, it'll dump into the sand. So he has to go very easily towards Shandagha and then into the creek itself. And usually these creeks, they were the origin of the cities. So Dubai, Sharjah, Ajman, Al Quwain, Ras Al Khaimah. Creek was very important because it was a natural port for the people to have their dhows and their boats, their ships in that area to be protected from the winds of the sea itself. This is a very nice, beloved picture to my heart. I think I can talk for 1 hour about this picture only, showing the traditional architecture of Dubai, like any Arab Islamic cities. The fort in the middle, which is still existing from 1799, about 216, 17 years old now. The Grand Mosque next to the fort, the market area along the creek, and then the residential of Bar Dubai, Shandagha, Al-Fuhaidi area, and we can go into details. For example, this was a very unique tree, the rolla or the rolla tree, which had the history of Dubai again. And then on the back we have the Arras area, very congested. We can see the harmony of architecture, the materials which we have used, and very noticeable that these darker colors, these are the houses which are built from palm tree fronds, and the one at the back, the whitish one, these are the gypsum, which was mainly either for the sheikhs, the merchant people, and the Barasti one was for the middle income people of the city. Hatta is a village which is also part of Dubai, but it is about 115 kilometers away toward the east on the boundaries with Oman. There the architecture is different because it is in the valley, so they are using mud construction rather than gypsum. And a small village consisting of the fort, the Wali house, and about 25 mud constructed houses and some Barasti houses. Couple of watchtowers on the two mountains. That's why what's called Al-Hajarain, the two stones on the north and on the south. And completely it was restored. I don't know if I'm going too fast or too slow. Okay, now I'll go a little bit into more detail, starting with the defensive building. Mainly defensive, we had three types. The wall, which was around the city. Then we have the fort, and we have the watchtowers. So the wall, I have talked about it, which was around the city of Dubai, about 2.5 meters high, about 50 centimeters in width. It's not like the wall of China, but much smaller. And there was a wall along the side of Deira also, which is, we know where the location is. Till now it is called Shara al-Sur, the Sur Street or the old Wall Street, but nothing is remained of that part of the wall. Here we can see part of the wall to the left of the Fuhaidi fort, which some part was reconstructed with the same width, about 50 centimeters, the same stones which was used. And on this slide, when we are restoring one of the houses in Al-Fuhaidi district, one of the owners, Muhammad Khouri, may Allah bless him, he passed away a couple of years ago. He said, if you dig in this area, you will find the foundation of the wall. So we dug in that area and we found this foundation of the wall, and we kept it. And then at the other part, we just rebuilt to show the thickness and the height of the wall itself, which was around the city. And just yesterday also, we had in our design committee to redraw the wall exactly in the areas which was in the old part of the city of Dubai. Fuhaidi Fort being the oldest existing building from 1799 in Dubai, unique fort with two circular towers and one square towers, and it was restored by the municipality and used as the Dubai Museum now. The third type is the watchtowers, and we have a couple of types. We have the cylindrical one, like the one on the right, Burj Nahar, which was built in 1939, with different types of holes, the small ones for looking, and then these straight ones for shooting. And we have what we call the mazghal, like the nose, for pouring the boiled water or oil on the attackers and the enemies. And sometimes they have openings like this one for the cannons, even to shoot against the enemies. The one on the left is from Naif Fort, which again was built 1938. A very unique watchtower is called Ruyul watchtower, Murabbaat Ruyul. Ruyul means the one with the mother of the legs. So it has always, I ask my students if they can count how many legs they have. People maybe they think they are only 5, but they are 7. They are not 5. The one to the right, it has like 3 columns. And this was just exactly in front of Dubai Municipality nowadays. It was used as a guarding area for the people when they come from the desert, from Khawanij, Awir, and these areas. They were submitting their guns to the guards in this tower. They were putting it on the upper room. And when they leave the city, the Bedouins, they give them back again to take with them. Now, defensive, it needs another lecture, inshallah, maybe in the future. Residential buildings, we start with the oldest type of the residential, the Bedouin tents. We call it Bayt al-Sha'r because it is made from the hair of the camels or the goats. And these were mainly used by the Bedouins. And we know that the Bedouins, they move from place to place wherever it is raining. There is greenery, there is grass. So their houses should be also portable to put it on the back of the camels and take it with them, with the separation in the middle for men and women and the majlis and so on. So this is the very oldest type of housing or things used as housing. Then we have the traditional mud houses in Hatta, which again the foundation was made from stones from the valley, and the walls are made from mud bricks, and the roof is from the palm tree front. So all traditional materials which are available in the area itself, and also the barasti and the traditional palm tree arish houses. This picture is from Dubai Museum. And usually we had 2 types. You can see on the right side, this is the summer type. We call it the arish. It is flat roof, a lot of openings, and there is a wind tower made of jute on the top of it for the summertime. And the one at the back with a pitched roof, and that was used in winter because of the rain, and the rooms are closed with mat and so on. So this was, most of the houses was from palm tree fronts. And this is a sketch showing the boundary wall of the Barasti house. On the left, the winter room, the toilets, the qati'a, and the summer room with the wind tower. And sometimes they had the manama for sleeping because especially in the summer, no electricity. So people were sleeping on this little bit high, about 1 meter high sleeping area. And sometimes you find 1 tree maybe in the mid of the court of the house. Then the most developed houses like Shaikh Saeed House, which are houses made from coral stone, shell stone, gypsum as a mortar, and for the roofs, chandal wood, murabba wood for the roofs, and then saruj, which is a burned mud or clay for waterproofing. Now Shaikh Saeed House is one of the largest houses which we have in Dubai, and right now it is the museum for old manuscripts and photographs. Some of the studies we did, for example, this is the map of Shandagha, about 192 houses, and one of the studies, researches which we did to check who was the owner or the person who was living in every house in 1950. We have from 1900 until 1950, but for example here, and then we did the studies, we come to know that this was the eastern part of Shandagha, the western part of Shandagha, and then the tribes and the families, Bin Harab, Al-Meheri, Shamsi, and different tribes which were living in everywhere. So it's a very nice research. And even J.G. Lorimer, for example, in 1908, he mentioned the tribes who were living in every district of every city in the Gulf. For example, in Dubai, he mentioned that in Shandagha, it was the Al-Meheri, Al-Bu Meher, the Shawamis, Al-Maktoum for sure, ruling family, they were living all in Shandagha area. And same thing we are doing for Daira and Bar Dubai, to know all the families and tribes who were living in this area. This picture is also one of the old pictures of Al-Fuhaidi area. This house in the middle was the house which I lived in, my grandfather's house, for 17 years until I did my study in the States. And right now it's part of the ruler's court, the Diwan in Bardoy, but part of Fuhaidi. Still we have 54 houses which are there. Talking about the mosques, we have two different types of mosques. We have the Grand Mosque. Originally, there was only one Grand Mosque in most of the Islamic cities, and then there was the daily, 5-time daily prayer mosque. The Grand Mosque, which was in the middle of the city, and it's the oldest mosque in the city of Dubai. Inside the wall it was, with 54 domes on the top of it, just next to the fort. And we can see this is the inner part, which is usually the winter, and the veranda for the summer. And even in summer, sometimes, especially for the sunset and the night prayer, they were using the open area because there is no sun, and the Fajr prayer, the early morning. Now, it was rebuilt, the mosque itself, but with the same designs of the traditional architecture. This is another one of the smaller mosques which we have restored in Shandagha. We have 6 old mosques. Al-Mulla Mosque, very close to the Shaikh Saeed House, with a very simple minaret, rounded shape. It's for 25-30 people because it is a daily prayer mosque. And this is the Utaybat Mosque, also in Shandagha. From inside, we can see that it's more beautiful, the columns, the capitals, the corners of the arches, and all around we can see that there are windows because we don't need any kind of privacy in the mosque. So you can get the passive ventilation, the cooling system through the mosque itself. And this one is the mosque at Hatta, the old mosque in Hatta. Now there it is made from mud bricks, again very simple and nice minaret. And people who have been to Hatta, it's a very nice location looking onto the fallet system, the irrigation system of Hatta, with a lot of palm tree plantation in that area. Educational buildings, schools mainly. We know that there was not much of schools in the last century. The first school established in Dubai, formal school we can say, before it was just teaching of Quran and mathematics in the mosque. The first school was Al-Ahmadiyya school, which was built in 1912 by honorable person, Sheikh Ahmed bin Dalmouk. He was a pearl merchant, and he established this school. It was just one story in 1912. In 1920, they built the second story, and they brought the teachers from Eastern Saudi Arabia, from Al-Ahsa, and also from Al-Zubayr in South Iraq. And the students, they were studying on the lower floor. The teachers were living on the upper floor, like your university here, I think, maybe. And in 1920, the teachers, they said that it was very hot. So Ahmed bin Dalmouk, he built this wind tower for them to be a little bit, at least, in a better position. Right now, it is a museum of history of education in the Emirates, how it was developed from these small houses until it was developed to the universities and big schools. This is the interior of the courtyard of the school itself. We can notice that the arches, it is taken from the Mughal architecture of India in Delhi and Agra, because we had this trade with India. So, always architecture is affected by the neighboring countries and so on. Second school was Al-Falah school, built in 1927. People think that this is the school, but that is not the school. These 4 tents, this is the school only, with a very large area. This was built by another honorable person called Muhammad Ali Zainal. He built Falah schools in Jeddah, in Mecca, in Ahsa. He was also a pearl merchant who was living mainly in Mumbai or Bombay. And he built this school in 1927. It stayed for about 20 years, and then the new modern school came in the 50s of the last year. Talking about souks and markets, this is the oldest photo which we have of Dubai from 1908. This was taken by the missionaries who were coming from United States, from Connecticut to the Gulf area, and we thank them that they took these pictures, otherwise we didn't have. This is Souk Al-Arsa in Deira. Right now the souk is restored, and here the Bedouins were coming with their charcoal, with their wooden items, dried lemon and so on, selling their items and buying rice and oil and so on. Another old market in Bardera, Souk Deira from the 1950s. You can see that shops on the 2 sides and covered by barasti also. Very small shops, about 3.5 meters in width. And then the market, it developed to have specialized in herbs, in cloth, in cotton, and so on. One of the Dubai markets, after we did the sealing again for the markets and redeveloping of the market. Last thing about the architecture, talking about the parts of the house, of the building. This is a typical house, for example. We have the entrance with the main gate. And usually from outside, when you see the building, is very simple, not much of decoration and things, especially on the gate which is entering the house itself. And that shows whether it is a house of a sheikh or a ruler or a rich person, pearl merchant, and so on. And then always we have this kind of what we call the zigzag entrance to keep the side not to look into the courtyard if there are ladies, for the privacy. So person who is here, he cannot see the ladies who are inside the courtyard and inside the house. And always next to the entrance, either on the left or on the right, will be the main majlis. And that was the majlis for the men, because the ladies' majlis will be inside. And I remember in the 1960s, the majlis is not a majlis, but it was like a hotel. So if we have any relatives coming from Bahrain, from Kuwait, from other countries, they stay in the majlis for 2 months, 3 months. So they have breakfast, lunch, dinner, free with the owner of the house, and the ladies will be inside. 1950s, 60s, then we started with the first hotel, the Airlines Hotel and Shatt al-Arab Hotel and so on. So it was a majlis for the gathering, but it was also like a hotel for the people and the hospitality for the people who will come. Then we have the courtyard and the middle, and usually we had either what we call the Indian walnut tree, the loz tree, the cedar tree, or the palm tree. Sometimes they had animals like chicken, goats, cows in the courtyard, and that was the playground for the children. This was the house which I lived in, my grandfather's house. Then we had, if the house was of 2 stories, the lower story was for the winter time. We find that the walls are very thick, sometimes 60, 70 centimeters, and completely closed, so it will be warm in winter. And the upper room will be for the summer. So every year we have this migration from below to up and from up to below. And if the owner is a merchant, so most of these are storages, whether my grandfather, he was dealing with rice and food and sometimes with fabrics. So these were mainly storages for the items which was close to the market itself. Showing the entrance, for example, with some decorations, wooden doors from teak wood, and different either floral or geometrical decorations on the top of the door to show the position of the person who is owning the building. Wind towers was a very unique item in these houses of Dubai, and also the Gulf area, whether it is southern part of the Gulf or northern part, which is southern Iran. The wind tower was a very unique element to give the privacy, but in the same time to bring the air, collect the air from any direction, 4 directions, and take them into the rooms. And we have done a lot of studies on the wind tower. If the temperature, for example, in summer, it is 45 degrees outside, under the wind tower it comes to 35 and it comes low to 32, which is some kind of suitable for living. If it is 40 outside, 28 or 30 will be very suitable. The other thing is that the wind tower, it works to exceed the velocity, the speed of the wind, because it is like a neck. When the wind goes in, then it goes much faster when it reaches to the room which is underneath, which will be the living room. And the living room was for sleeping, for eating, socializing in these houses. And the velocity, for example, if outside of the wind is like 10 knots, when it gets down, it is like 15 to 18 knots. So we did some studies. These studies you can find in a book by Peter Jackson called The Wind Tower. A lot of these studies have been done, and you can find it in that book. Traditional ornaments, which was used in the building. We had the gypsum, we had the wooden. So, for example, this slide, it shows the gypsum works. And again, you can find either the floral shape or the architectural shape of the geometrical shape of the designs. Just lately, we have published a book. It's the reference book or encyclopedia of the traditional decorative elements of architecture, with about 920 elements categorized into chapters, doors, windows, wind towers, And we have given a code for every one of these 920 elements. And from the code, we can know that this decorative element, it's in Shaikh Saeed House, in Shandagha, on the upper floor, on the top of the door, on this side. So we can go to that detail of the... and a lot of architects now, they are using these elements in their modern architecture in Dubai, in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, and we can find in many of these. So it is a kind of reference of traditional architecture for the Gulf region. Wooden ornaments for the doors especially. And then sometimes we can find calligraphy, either verses from Quran or some wisdom verses. The one on the right is from Al-Ahmadiyya school. On the left, some of the houses with Tawakkaltu ala Allah, MashaAllah. And sometimes colored glass also is used to give this kind of nice colors in the room itself. Building materials quickly. Mainly, it was the coral stone, which was brought from the sea, either from Jabal Ari area or from Al Quwain, Khor al Bayda. Coral stone is very suitable for construction. It is very light. Easily it can be cut into shapes, and it works as insulation wall, which we have nowadays, because it's porous, so a lot of air in between it, between outside and inside. Again, if outside the temperature is 45, inside it could be 35 and 32, just because of these walls with gypsum as a mortar in between. Second type of stones, what we call the shell stone. The shell stone was brought from the sea. It's very heavy shells which is dumped on each other, and it was cut into pieces. Usually these are very heavy and very strong and used for forts, watchtowers, foundations, and so on. In Hatta, because we have a lot of mud, there is no coral stone or shell stone because it is inland village. There, the traditional mud construction, which we find in India, in Iran, and all over the world maybe, mixing of mud with water and hay for 3 days, and then making blocks out of them. And it depends, 30 by 30, 20 by 20, and then they put them on each other. And again, the mud is used as a mortar in between. And we have what we call saruj, which is the burned mud. They take these mud bricks and burn them for 8 to 9 days until they become clay. And this saruj is used as a waterproofing material on the roof of the houses or at the foundation. For the ceiling, it differs from city to city, but for example, in the city of Dubai, if we see the ceiling made of palm tree trunks, we know that this is before 1900. After 1900, they were using what we call the chandalwood, the trade when we had with Zanzibar. So they were bringing this chandalwood, which is stronger than the palm tree. Especially we have the problem of the termite, and it eats the palm tree very fast. Chandal is a little bit better. Chandal was imported from Zanzibar, especially with the trade when we had with East Africa from the mangrove trees, and especially from a city called Simburanga. That was the good quality. And then later on in the 1940s, we used the murabba, which is the redwood from the trees from India and Burma and Malaysia. So just looking at the ceiling of any house in Dubai, old city, we can know somehow the date of the building itself or when it was built. Some of the houses, for example, Ahmadiyya school, we have the lower floor, we have the ceiling from Chandal and the upper floor from Murabba. So we know that it was built into different stages. This is sketch, it shows the construction of the house, the walls, the air pillars, the ceiling with the chandal wood, with the barasti, gypsum, and saruj. Some of the conservation projects which we have done through the last 25 years from 1991 till today. First project we started with Al-Fuhaidi Fort and restored that in 1991, and it became the Museum of Dubai. A very large project we are working on now is the development of the historic part of Dubai, especially Shandagha, with the 190 houses to be the largest open museum in the world. We have about 50 museums. We just started next month, May, we are opening the first museum for Saruq al-Hadid Archaeological Site. January next year, we are opening 3 museums, the Perfume Museum. Shaikh Saeed House is going to be the Museum of Al Maktoum family. And we have the Visiting Center. And then whatever is related to the heritage and culture of Emirate and Dubai. So we have the local zone where we have the traditional games museum, jewelry museum, costumes museums, and then we have the Bedouin life, talking about falconry, camels, horses, and things like that. And then we have the sea life, talking about the dhow building, seafaring, pearl diving, types of fish, and so on. So all the things which are related to the culture of the Emirates and Dubai, you can find them in these 50 museums, in addition to boutique hotels, traditional restaurants. So a person can stay 3 days in Shandagha only just to see these museums if they want. Otherwise, they can go to the other parts of the city. So that's a very large projects which we are working on right now. These are some of the pictures. This is Shaikh Saeed House in 1981, how it was the situation. And after we did the restoration of the building in 1986 to take it back to its original shape. One of the mosques, Bin Zayed Mosque, on the left before restoration and on the right after the restoration. Ahmadiyya School, that was the situation in 1993 when we started the restoration works. Very bad structural situation. And the same picture after we did the restoration. The Heritage House just next to Al-Ahmadiyya School in 1995. I remember when we started, a lot of scorpions and snakes and things in the courtyard. And that's after we cleaned and restored the building. It is now a museum for how the social life of Dubai was in the 1950s. So you can find the pictures and sculptures of how the life was in Dubai. One of the latest one was Al-Aqili House. He was a poet, a very famous poet in Dubai. Also, we took his house and turned it into a museum of his life and his poetry. That's before, and this is after restoration was finished. This is near the market area in Deira, Souq Al-Arsa. Also, we worked on the elevation of the buildings along the creek, and we got a prize for this from the Arab Cities Organization to redo the elevation of the buildings. One of the important buildings was Al-Wakil House, one of the first office buildings in 1936 in Dubai. That was before restoration, and this is after restoration, and it is a traditional restaurant along the creek, a very nice restaurant. The market area, that was the situation in the 1990s. So we took it back and we unified the doors, take it back to the teak wood doors, the signs to be unified with the Arabic calligraphy, the ceilings and so on. Al-Fuhaidi historic area, previously called Al-Bastakiya, with 54 houses. Also a unique area with wind towers and courtyards and decoration elements. Now, and the plan is that this becomes the art center of Dubai. So a lot of galleries, the local and the foreign artists will be there, in addition to some restaurants and hotels. It's completely finished as restoration-wise, but the usage rehabilitation, we are working on it. This is one of the houses, Her Excellency Habs al-Ulama, her grandfather house. It is our office now. This is the picture before restoration, and that's after we finalize the restoration. It's our office there now. It's a very nice, unique house, and that's the house from outside with a tent in front of it. Hatta village, also we worked when we started in the 1991. It was in a very bad situation. Most of the ceilings were collapsed, and there the construction is with mud. So we started also doing the restoration of the fort and of the houses. This is one of the houses, how the situation was before, and the tower on the top of the mountain, and that's after restoration. Heritage Museum. So these are some of the 13 museums which we worked on during the last 15, 20 years. The first one was Dubai Museum itself, and we tried not to make the museum as showcases, but to feel the life. So when you enter this museum, you feel how the life was in the 1950s in Dubai with the sound, and trying to use the 5 senses, so you can smell the herb market, you can hear the shouting of the people, you can see, you can touch some of the items and so on. So it's a very nice, unique museum. The Sea Hall. Al-Ahmadiyya School, the Museum of the Education, how the traditional education started from the Katatib and then developed to the modern education and universities. Heritage House showing the Majlis and the bride room. Hatta Heritage Village, also some of the houses we have used as a museums for weaponry, traditional life and traditional crafts. Coins Museum in Al-Fuhaidi area, where we have about 470 coins from time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ until today. Every stage, Umayyad, Abbasi, Ottoman, and so on, Andalusia, in every room. So again, very unique, nice museum. And different activities which we have in the different areas. For example, they had the Saturday market and Sikka activity for arts and so on in Fuhaidi. This was the National Day celebration in Shandagha. So it's becoming a place of gathering for the people to come, especially during the festivals and so on. Also, we have done a regulation for the modern buildings in the historic area. So the part which we have seen in the first slide of the 1950, we have regulation that no modern buildings with, for example, stainless steel, glass elevations and things to be built in this historic area, again, to give kind of unity and harmony for the buildings. This is the post office, for example. It's taking from the traditional architecture in a modern way, but the colors and the paints to be from the traditional, either light brown and beige colors for the buildings. This is the telecommunication, the Salat building, again refaced with the traditional elements. Residential building also. Shandagha, as I mentioned, we are working on these 50 museums right now, developing the whole area. And also, we submitted the file to UNESCO to be Dubai Creek as a World Heritage Site. Inshallah, next year they are discussing the site itself. And we published more than 35 different publications on history and culture of Dubai. We have a book on the history of Dubai from 2600 until today. We have the reference book for architecture. Some of the books are here. I'm going to donate it for your library, so it will be kind of a reference for students. Quickly, finally, just very quick, we have established the Architectural Heritage Society also, which is a non-profit organization established in 2003 with a vision to have a living heritage with a vision to the future. Now we have about 1,250 members, and membership is open for anyone who is living in United Arab Emirates, locals and non-locals. So we have members from 53 different countries. We have honorary members like most of the Sheikh Sultan Al-Qasimi, Shaikh Saeed Al-Qasimi, Prince Charles. He visited us in our office in Fuhaidi. Many of the ambassadors, they are also honorary members. And we do different activities, lectures, seminars, exhibitions, reading some stories for children and so on. The best part of the society is the visits which we do to different parts of the world. Tonight, inshallah, is our 33rd visit. We are going to southern Italy, to Sicily, Napoli, and these places. And this is again open. For example, the first visit was in 2006. We went to Tunisia, Kenya, Uzbekistan, Taj Mahal, and this is the 33rd visit, and we did some publication, also some stories for children and so on. Thank you very much, and as always we say, our heritage is our identity.
I wanted to ask, I noticed in the pictures of Shandagha and Dera that you can see a clear pattern in how the communities are built up. And if you look at Dubai now, it's very disjointed and there's a lot of urban sprawl. Is there any research or investigations into implementing what was done in the past to provide better communities for the future developments in Dubai?
Okay. We have two things now. Our job is to keep the architecture, so that's what we have seen in Shandagha, for example, and Fuhaidi. Now, the secret behind Shandagha and Fuhaidi is when in 1971 they did one of the first planning design for the city. They didn't know what to do with these two areas, Shandagha and Fuhaidi, so they suspended them until 1990. For more than 20 years, it was suspended. That's why it was kept. The rest of the city, because they give license, so people were demolishing their houses and building 4-story, 5-story building, although some of them are left. So that's why these two areas mainly are kept as it is. What we did also in Dubai Municipality, especially with the planning department, this book was very important. So any building which comes in the historic part of the city, it should have traditional elevations. Paint should be traditional to give this kind of unity. For example, now the modern areas, Jumeirah Road, if you have driven in Jumeirah Road, you can find that the buildings are modern, but again, they have traditional elevation. Al-Jaddaf area, which is a 10-story area planning, again, they have to do their designs according to the tradition. Other parts of the city, for example, Medina Jumeirah, this is open, but architects, they can use. Now we are going toward kind of green architecture, sustainability, so more thought to be given to the traditional architecture. What I say usually, the modern architecture, and always I advise the new architects, main two things should be there. The design of the building should be suitable for the climate, which we have, not to have a closed skyscraper buildings. You can open the window. 6 months a year, we can open the window. From November until April, the weather is not bad. And January, February, temperature outside is 15, 16. Some people, they open the AC on 24. You can just open the window. And we have sunlight, and alhamdulillah, maybe out of 365 days, you find 345 days sunlight. So we can use this natural lighting for the buildings. Many of these things could be used in the modern architecture. There is one new residential area called Wardat al-Sahara, the desert rose. It's planned by the municipality. Next year supposed to be started. Again, this kind of community idea, the school, everything to be close to each other. Let's use your building, I think here, the architect, he designed. And sometimes you don't have to see the wind tower, but the idea of the shade of the building, this is a very important ideas in the planning of the old city. The corridors to be narrow, so you will get the shade, the wind will go through it. And in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, we have many of the architects now, they are using this in a modern way. If the mason who built these buildings in the 1950s, you bring him nowadays, he will not go for wind tower. He will, again, think what is suitable for the today life. And the second thing is to have this kind of identity. At least when I see this building, I know that this is Abu Dhabi or Dubai. It is not New York or it is not Tokyo. So some identity should be there. Like our dress, when you see this with the tarbouch and these things, you know that this is from the Emirates. When we talk our dialect, you know that this is the local dialect. So these are the things which we have to keep. Our language, our dress, our culture, our architecture.
Hi, my name is Hind Mazaina. I'm from Dubai. I'm an artist and a writer. A question is, any activities to preserve buildings from the 70s and 80s, which I think is part of, anyone born from the 70s onwards is part of our history. And could you also maybe explain why Bastakia was renamed to Al-Fahidi? Thank you.
1970s, in our department, we have a regulation that any building which 40 years is passed by, we'll put it into our evaluation system. So we are in 2016, 1976. Any building before that, it goes into our evaluation. In the evaluation, we have a form which we look into the importance of the building architecturally, socially, economically, as tourist-wise, research-wise, and then we give them grades. So grade A, and this is taken from the international regulations from England, from France, some other countries. So we have buildings from 80 grade and up to 100. This will be grade A. Nothing should be changed into the building like Fuhaidi Fort and Shaikh Saeed House. Then we have grade B to keep the outside of the building inside. If it is a museum or so, we can do some changes. Grade C from 60 to 70 to keep the building, and we can add a couple of rooms, things like that, if it is a museum and so on. So there is a regulation. Right now, we are working on the buildings of the 60s and the 70s to keep some of them as part of the history of architecture of the place. The name Bastakia was changed to Al-Fahidi because of some social, economical, political reasons. And Fuhaidi is the area where the fort is. So we have Al-Fahidi Fort in the area, and that's why the whole area is now called Al-Fahidi area.
Yes, hello.
Yes.
My name is Joanna. I lived 5 years here in Abu Dhabi. Now I came as a tourist only. I have two questions. Are there any plans for for the old fisherman village in Ras Al Khaimah that will be maybe restored? Now it's looking quite bad, I would say. And for the future, do you thinking about implementing any new regulations for private residential sector? I mean that there will be some regulation if people build a house that nowadays there are lots of houses that are new, but they are sometimes looking very strange, I would say, in the shape of a boat or a cave. And so do you plan any regulations for the private sector as well to implement it?
Regarding the first question, well, my job is mainly in Dubai, but according to what I know from responsible people in Ras Al Khaimah, that they have a project for the old city of Ras Al Khaimah to restore the buildings. The fisherman is in the old part of the city. So there is a project to develop these houses in Ras Al Khaimah, as it is in the other cities of the Emirates. So I think there are some projects to restore these buildings. Regulations in general, again, it's free architecture. People can design their buildings as they are. Some regulations are there for sure, the height of the building, the shape of the building. Sometimes the municipality interferes. For example, he painted his house purple color. So they ask him to change, at least to be something not pink color and things like that. But at the end, it's the taste of the owner of the house. He says, I want to make a Spanish design, I want to make Greece design, I want to make local design. But the good thing is that the local architecture is becoming more and more, not to imitate, but to take the idea of the courtyard, the lighting, the U-shape, C-shape of the building. So that's increasing. And this, sometimes you need regulation and sometimes you need teaching and education for the people that this is our identity, this is our culture. So and that's why we have this kind of lectures and visiting to the universities, especially students of architecture, to tell them how the designs should be. But we don't want to force only the building should be this designer. It is the freedom of every person to design his house as he wants.